It is,
Sorry.
it's quite okay. It is the survival techniques that members of our species have, and this would tie in with one of your favorite topics, the genes.
Mm.
It is the survival techniques that has allowed the species to live. What things to eat, what things not to eat, in fact, how you fight, when to fight, when to run, et cetera, et cetera. The survival techniques, that's the root chakra. Then the Swadhisthana, which is misnomered the sex chakra, we would do better to describe it as sensual gratification. It certainly is, governs the need to procreate,
Mm-hmm.
from which we can separate procreation into recreation also. But also, it also helps to govern, what we ingest in terms of how we satisfy our sensual pleasures that way. And the other pleasurable drives that we have. Why? Because pleasure is vivifying. It rouses the life force. It gives us a sense of well-being, but at the same time, it's also healing. And none other than our great philosopher Marvin Gaye gave us, the key: sexual healing. How, rousing the life force causes healing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's ingrained in us. And then there's the Manipura, which is our dominance in our life, our independence, our putting our flag, so to speak, in a certain territory and giving us financial independence, a career, a sense of self, a sense of determining my own life. And then Anahata, which is how we bond with each other as a primate through our emotions. So those are the four basics. And but above those are the other chakras which help to, because these are very basic urges. But if you don't exhibit your free will and make your choices better, then these lower instincts and drives can lock you in, to reference to your plant and the roots and the pot, which limits us. If you don't use your free will to govern these instincts, they can, as we all know, lead you to some very bad choices in life, but they aren't really choices. They're urges and drives that you give into, even sometimes when, you tell yourself, I really shouldn't be doing this, but I really like it, so I'm going to do it anyway.
Right, right. So this is good, and I really appreciate you giving us the technical names for it, because most of us just know first, second, third kind of references to it. And so when you talk about, like, say for instance, the base chakra, the first chakra, the survival instinct, many people are born into, and I'll tell you how I understood it. We are born into a structure, like a culture that tells us, when you say survival techniques, um, I think of it as us being indoctrinated into a system or a way of thinking. And many people never get to the point where they are moving up through this thing to realize that that a natural progression is that individuation process of separating out of or from the clan into and seeking out or going out. I love Joseph Campbell's talking about the hero's journey, but I don't even think that we're close to that at that point. But to realize that our life is not meant to be lived in the shadow of someone else or mimicking somebody else is that one of the first lessons that we learn, or does that come further?
I think that comes further. That's more in the Manipura. I remember a conversation my youngest son told me, and he was about maybe 19 or 20 when he told me this, but I didn't know about it. And so my mother was raised Baptist. And so, of course, she took me to the Baptist church, and because she was raised Baptist.
Mm-hmm.
And so one day, my youngest son and she were hanging out together, and she was talking to him about Christianity and her way of viewing the world through Christianity. And he said, Dad, because of how I was raised, I think differently than her, but I also know that she's my grandmother and I had to respect her. So he said, what I said was, Grandma, but maybe you think this way and you're comfortable with Christianity because you were born into it. Other people were born into other religions and they feel just the same about theirs as you do. But maybe sometimes you can choose a different religion because it fits you better. And so his idea that, which sparked in her, and but she never brought it up to me. Yeah, I do this because I was born into it. And so many of us use the techniques, use the ideas, the whole culture that we buy into as a young age, but at a certain point in your life, you're supposed to choose those things or not choose them. That's one of the interesting things I find about the Amish is before you can actually join the church at a certain age, they kick you out. They tell you, go out into the world. I forget the name. It's kind of a Dutch German word that they use, but go out into the world and you have to experience what the other part of the life has to offer. So they go out and they engage in promiscuity and drug use and watch all kinds of movies and dance and all kinds of things. But because they were raised a certain age to what they are now, 90% of the children who go out come back and they choose. I choose this life of austerity because I find I function better in this. I see the value in it, and I don't really want what's out there. But at least they're given the idea of a choice. I was baptized, I believe I was probably 6 or 7. So I could not really make a choice to be a Christian. And when I had the opportunity to make a choice, I chose, you know what, I'm going to look at other things.
Yeah.
But yes, you're right. We're born into it. And at this point, you're supposed to decide, I choose this or I choose something else. You don't just keep going along with it because you were born into it. You have to wake up to your sense of self and take governance over your own life and be sovereign of your own realm, which is your consciousness and your vehicle, and say, this is what I choose to do because I find the value in it. Or I've seen other things, I'm going to choose something else, or I've not seen enough, I'm going to start looking all over the world.
That's really good. I'm so glad you shared that the story about your son. One of the things that that I did was that I was raised Baptist as well, and I knew I kept putting off the time that I was going to get baptized. I was not allowing myself to be pressured into it. And when I did, I went so of my own free will and my own desire. But ironically, I knew that I still had issues with what I was learning. And it wasn't until I went overseas and disconnected totally from the culture, my culture, did I have the courage to come back and say, that doesn't work for me anymore. And so I think, to your point about the Amish, and I have talked to some Amish guys about that experience. I think that is it's a beautiful thing to experience, but I don't know that it goes far enough for people to really appreciate the difference. So now, with that first chakra, then the survival instinct, and survival techniques, the genes, all of those things, is it just perfectly natural to the growth process into the next one? Or how do we, if
Yes.
think of it as a matriculation, how is it that we go from one to the other? Is that
These, these automatically turn on
Mhm.
at a certain age. But the others, and that's where the system really shows its beauty, is because along with understanding the chakras, these Black people also they're the ones who actually developed the practice of yoga, because it was the yoking back into the divinity that we are, that you had to actually put in work and raise the energy, because you're learning about life not just from your experiences, but from the information that's locked into the chakras. So the chakras, they don't just have behavior, they have ideas, they have concepts locked into them also. And it requires energy before those things blossom into your consciousness. And so the first four turn on automatically. But you have to do the work to raise the energy to the others to govern these animal instincts. That's the whole riddle of the Sphinx, this human head on the body of a lion, this animating energy. And that's what the lower ones are. They just animate us, they make us behave and act and do. So that's all automatic. Now, how you behave and how you act and how you do in accordance to the divine laws, that's a choice that you have to make through the work that you have to do to turn on the other chakras to understand, oh, this is what life is, and this is why, simply because I have this swanasthana, which governs my sensual pleasure and gratification. I have this cultural idea that came to our culture that eating chitlins on January 1st is somehow good luck. But now that I understand that this is the waste product of one of the lowest life forms on earth, I make a choice. This is my temple. I'm not going to pollute it with this kind of food. So that's how the progression works. And so you have to put in work actually to open up the energy centers higher up than those. Otherwise, you will be prey to what the Western secret societies like to toy with us and talk about, how the Western world is the first world and how, quote unquote, the undeveloped world is the third world. And what they're actually saying is you are animals because you're governed by the lowest aspects of your being, the lower chakras. We are the first world because we've opened up the higher centers and understand the purpose of life. All they leave out what the second world is.
Whoa. So when you say it requires work, I mean, so that's so good, because I love that this is the process takes us up into a certain point, just like everything else. I think just like religion or this our own sense of self, our own confidence and all that, it takes us up into a certain point, and then there is this now we get to choose. So with that in mind, when you say the work, many will be confused as to how to make that happen. And still, and this is the thing, because there's a part of us that still want to hang on to what we've always done and always known, but at the same time be able to experience something different. So how do we, because it's not a lot of people who, whether we're talking about a state of nirvana, opening up Kundalini energy, not a lot of people understand that there is a benefit to going above and beyond what is normal. But there's an idea that
I agree with you, because to go back to the start, the true purpose of what life is for, we don't really sit down and discuss it. So if you entertain and toy with and play around with the idea that there is only one entity in the universe, there's one consciousness and one energy matter substrate, which everything comes from. So it's referenced in the Christianity, I am that I am, meaning that God is alone. There is nothing else. And when you're alone, there is no experience. If you're sitting in a room all by yourself and there's no stimulation in your eyes, your nose, your ears, your skin, nothing, there's no experience. Experience comes from, there has to be an other for you to interact with to have an experience. Hence, the whole creation comes into being. Now, there's the other. But now, how does the experience happen? The experience happens because we are unique creatures. We are the only vehicles that God can come through the world into and experience. But it can't experience itself in the world as a human being. It is a divine being capable of all sorts of omnipotence, omniscience. So it can only come through somebody that has worked on themselves to integrate completely into how the laws function, so that God can come through as a divine entity. And then what happens? God gets its chance to experience creation as itself, and the person who has done the work gets the benefit of having a solution to any problem that occurs in their life being happy and joyful and peaceful all the time, unending happiness. Why? Because I have omnipotence and omniscience and omnipresence. So that's the win-win. The win-win for the person, the win-win for God. But if you're not operating with that concept, then you think your life is yours to do with as you choose, and I can ruin it or make all sorts of decisions, not realizing that, yes, you have free will. You can do that, but that's not the purpose of your life. And if you don't fulfill your purpose this time, the mercy and beneficence of God is you will be back to do it again, because the whole template is set up that way. You're here as you said from the first beginning, the potted plant. You are here to grow, and you will grow whether you like it or not. Your experiences, you can keep having the same ones over and over again and keep butting your head against the wall because you want to keep making the same choice, but you will be back. And eventually the mercy is one day, you know what? I'm not going to make this right turn that I've made 10,000 times before. At this point, I'm making the left turn.
Yeah, as you know, that's beautiful. And so let me kind of let me kind of find a jump off point in what you just said. You talk about this idea of the Aquarian age coming into being. And this morning, while I was doing my talk, the book, The Aquarian Gospel of Jesus the Christ, lit up in my mind. And in the beginning of that book, it talks about the Piscean age and then the Aquarian age. And one of the things that it said is that an age can be about 26,000 years.
That's the great age.
Mm-hmm.
And that's broken up into about 2,460 year increments. And that's where we kind of get the zodiac from.
Okay.
And so every 2,400 years, we go from one age to another age. And when we go around all 12, we have now completed that grand cycle. So we're going from the age of Pisces, correct, into the age of Aquarius. But that's each one is about 2,400 years. And then the larger one encompasses all 12 of those.
Okay. And so when you think about the vastness of this cosmos, when I think about and in imagining the vastness of the cosmos, I think about this, what we call God. And and I don't want to by any means try to make it seem as though it is in the magnitude of it, that what we do here is somehow missed, because it is not. But what I also see is that as we clear away some of the things that block us from that, I'm kind of Course in Miracles here, as we clear away some of the things that block us from acknowledging that we take part in all of this that is God. There is this, I guess there is this need for me in my mind to see that I participate by saying yes to how it flows into and through me, through what I do and how I share, how I
Mm-hmm.
show up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that for a lot of people, the ways in which we have learned about God, instead of opening to that, we don't recognize that what we're doing is that we're closing to it. So it's not that we are asking, we're not even demonstrating. Most people are probably not even demonstrating what it is that they say that they believe and desire, because the ways in which we block it for coming, for sure, is by perceiving that it is not total, or that it is not in and through all, that there are some that are, it to me seems as though it blocks it. And when you said the idea about the sensual pleasure healing of the second chakra, we do it even more so because there is so much of our being that has been taught the opposite, that instead of opening to sensual pleasure healing, we're closed off to it. So how is it that our messages get so flipped in the process that instead of being receptive, we're closing off?
Well, reference your point. We are born into a culture, and I won't say, I wanted to use the word unfortunately, but that's incorrect. The last 2,000 years has been ruled by a mindset of children, and great wisdom and understanding has been misunderstood and some purposely hidden. So we're born into a culture that has ideas and concepts that have no basis in reality. Consequently, referencing your point, we think about God, but words and syllables and concepts are symbols of a reality. You have to be able to get beyond the symbols and experience the reality itself. Difference. I can talk to you about what a ride on the highest, fastest roller coaster is. I can tell you it's high and it's thrilling and the wind goes through your hair and your stomach drops. But when you get on it and you go through that first drop, now you have an experience that is beyond words.
Mm-hmm.
So we, in our culture, we're taught, at least the Western culture, to think about God, as opposed to other cultures, predominantly people of color, to have an experience of God. And that's the source of their rituals and ceremonies, not to think about God, but to have an experience. And that's one of the things that comes out of this culture that we're talking about, the chakras, is this system of meditation, being able to sit still, breathe a certain way, such that you energize your parasympathetic nervous system, your heart rate slows down, your breathing rate slows down, your brain waves slow down, and your consciousness goes inside instead of being externalized and contacting the part of you that is quiet and still, the divine, unchanging part that we all have inside of us, and having an experience of knowing, oh, I am that I am. It's not out there, it's here. I am that I am. I'm consciousness, and consciousness beholding itself is that union that you want to have. Now, to your point, I understand that I'm a participant in this life experience. I am not just some random idea or random being who has no responsibility, number one, to how the universe is functioning, and two, no accountability for the things that I experience in my life. Once I know I'm participating and creating, I have a destiny, certain things I have to go through, but a lot of what I am choosing to think about or what's repressed, the injuries, the trauma, all of these things are generating my experience now. I need to take ownership over that because why? I am the ultimate creator. I'm just an individuated form of it. My job is to open myself up to all that I am to be for the eternal to come through me. And now let me manage and take ownership and pull this planet back from the brink that it is on right now with all this, because the study of human history is pretty much what we experience now, the study of war. If you it's that's all that we from recorded history, except for a certain part in Kemet for about 3,000 years. The rest is just war. We haven't even learned to stop killing each other yet and settling disputes with our words, to experience love in its grandest, knowing what I do to you, I do to me.
That's so good. That's so good. So, so now I love the way you explain this, that we're stuck in because we've learned through our system of education, we've learned that this idea about thinking, and thinking seems to have, and I don't know that it's replaced it, but thinking
Yes, it has.
to trump for many people this idea
Yes.
of experience.
Yeah.
And so if and what what's also interesting to me is that we hold it up in such high esteem. Let's see your degrees, or let's see how long you
Right.
in school, let's see this, let's see that, and don't and seem to prefer that.
Yes. A civilization of children
Mm,
thinking and believing over knowing.
mm,
It is the difference between water and wine. It's we have elevated intellectual understanding of words versus the knowing the reality that the words stand for. If you can, it's like we're going through an election process right now. So I can stand and have this debate, and I can use words and maybe sound a lot more intelligent and articulate than the other person.
mm-hmm.
How does that translate into how I'm going to govern? That has no relationship to how I'm going to govern.
Mm-mm.
I may be the most scandalous person in this race, but I can sound and present myself as an intelligent, articulate being. And as soon as I get in, my corruption is going to show because my character is so flawed.
Mm-hmm.
This is a civilization of children. And so words and symbols take the place of the experience of the reality, which is what we're which is the richness of life that we're all trying to get. Experience. And that's why our ancestors, a lot of them were the Gnostics, the knowers.
Mm-hmm.
But when a certain culture came and gave dominance, they didn't want people to know. I need you to believe. I need you to have faith, as opposed to you being sovereign. I can verify what you say through my experience myself. That's science. To know, sikra, to know. But
Mhm.
no, we've now it's I need you to believe. I have an opinion, and I want you to have faith in my opinion. Nonsense.
Yeah.
Utter
So
nonsense.
so I so and I love what you're saying because I know it to be true. But what happens a lot of times is that we have been out. So first off, they call the name Babylon Babyland, right? Um, hmm. And so sometimes we think that that it's happening someplace else, but here, even here, you can have people who can have an experience, and then someone on a television come along and tell them that's not what you saw, that's not what happened. Let me interpret for you what you're experiencing here.
What's the old joke about the woman catching her husband cheating on her, and his response is, "Who are you gonna believe, me or your lying eyes?"
Yeah, and basically that is sometimes what it comes down to. I mean, even if you looked at what happened on January 6th, right? Now all of a sudden the spin doctors, not that we were
Yeah,
there, but what we watched unfold, the spin doctors come in and they want to tell you what actually happened. And that's the way they put it, as if you saw anything else, you can't trust your lying eyes.
that's right. But when we are taught from as children, belief and faith are the cornerstones to your salvation. And how many times have parents, Santa Claus,
Mm.
Easter Bunny, tooth fairies, quote unquote, innocent little lies, but you're still manipulating minds through deception. And so you kind of teach people by default it's okay to be deceived for your own good. So now we have people in power who say, this is for your own good. We know what's best. And so we need you to operate according to a certain way. And so we're going to tell you what to think. Um, my wife is coming down. I'm going to have to stop
Okay.
here.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
But if but we can put a pin on this
Yes.
and do some more next week.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have
Appreciate
an
it.
amazing day.
Likewise. All
Bye-bye.
right. Peace.
Oh yeah, that was good. That was good. That was good. I'm so glad that we had that opportunity to hear about the chakra systems from that perspective. And yeah, and then we'll pick up we I don't even know how far we got, but that was good for me. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for being here. And I didn't get all of it recorded, but it's here on Facebook. I'm so grateful. All right. See ya.